My name is Dan Paulson. I'm an independent researcher that's been focusing on Genesis for a number of years now. There's some numbering patterns in there that become very bizarre. They look repetitive to me. I see numbers all throughout the Bible. We probably all do. 3s, 7s, 40s that show up in, you can hardly read any book of the Bible and not run into those numbers. So you would wonder why. And then you look up in Genesis and go, you know what? I see those same numbers way up here. So I will forewarn everybody that I'm looking for what is a common inner healing pathway. What I find is that all myth and religion from antiquity is built on one human life template and a human healing template. And that regardless of where you go, we're going to find that template. That is an interactive psychological template that helps one. It's more like a pathway like a Buddha would take or a Taoist would take, not an outward-looking religion. That's the carrier. So, as I go into this, I'm not a Christian, I'm not a theist or atheist. I'm looking at this with an open mind, saying there is something in here that isn't what either group is telling me. I see something at a deeper level that they don't see. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. And you know what? Let me be clear. When these are interpreted, they are all mentally interactive steps. There's something in here that you don't worship, that you interact with. And that in doing so, it affects a healing now. Now, obviously, I have to set this up. I'm making claims here, but I want to back up everything I say. But it takes time to do it, remembering that this is very old stuff and it was their technology. If we wanted to do something very quick today, if you wanted to get into whatever all the big games are and stuff like that people are playing and really get into it, how long does it take to get into that? You would have to do the same thing with this right here. It's going to take that same kind of exploration. And these groups of numbers are going to be like places that we have to stop and go, all right, we have to figure this puzzle out right here. But they're easy enough to figure out. There's a couple of things they're doing. Number one is word repeats is how they're encoding it. It would be as simple as if I said to you something like, I sent you a message by a runner, and people know this message because they hear it. It's going to a runner. It's not secure. The message is, meet me on 7th Street. Hurry up and get to 7th Street. I'll see you when you get to 7th Street. And as soon as you get the message, you go, oh, meet him on 3rd Street. He said 7 3 times. So you would know that, and that's what they're kind of doing in here. And it starts where? It starts at the very last day, day 7 of the first creation story, where day 7 is said 3 times. That's where the 7-3 grid starts right there. This is the day 7 of the first creation story. And on the 7th day, God ended his work which he made, and he rested on the 7th day from all the work that he had made. And God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all the work which God created and made. So right there, 7 and 3. And that's going to align with something on a self-healing template. There's 2 creation stories. If we put them parallel instead of linearly like this, we would see that both of them, the man and woman is not created in the first one. There's different conditions that are set, and it has a different style. The second one, as we get into, that's where man and woman are developed. But down here, what this is going to represent, if you're on board with it, they were both naked, and man and his wife, and were not ashamed. That represents a time in the life of each human being, okay? Remember, God called their name Adam. We're going to see that. Yeah, that's us, all of us. They were both naked, and the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. That means my conscious and my inner self were happy kids, laughing gleefully. I'm getting tickled and giggling and laughing and running around like a little child right there. That's the man and his wife, not ashamed, naked. We're not covered. This is metaphorically. This is not naked little children or naked humans running around in a garden. This is a metaphorical representation of the human being. Right here is where that 3-7 grid starts. And this is what it's going to refer to, this pure state of our life. Every time we go through these numbers that we're going to gather that go here, they're going to represent this exact place right here. This is where it ties to. Now, this is another part of it I need to explain better, that Adam and Eve is each human. Adam is the consciousness. Eve is the inner self that emerges as a result of life experiences and the way that the conscious has judged it and feels about it emotionally. That Eve becomes a product of that right there. That Eve is an inner part of us, that Adam is the outer part of us. It might be easier to say that the consciousness is the interface between all of our memories and who and what we are, and the outer world experience. However, Eve is the accumulation of all of those experience that the consciousness has had and has by the mere fact of, or the mere act of, deciding the quality of experiences. And you know what? That's natural. We do that. We get hurt. We don't like it. We get pain. We get shame. We get anger. We get hatred. We become those things. That's natural. Later, that's what we understand is what is our problem and that we want to rectify. So that's what I mean, that Adam and Eve part is like that. There's more to it than just inner outer. It is, this might be the best way to say it. The conscious has all of the experience and the feelings. Eve is the bundle of the memories and the emotions from those experiences. And we continue to build them and live through them. But that is Eve. And that Adam is the one that is looking at the world, putting on a show, pretending like it's not there. Yeah. Or the one that's sitting there quietly, mind is going in turmoil. There's really problems. Maybe we're acting out. There's a lot of, those are the things that are Eve. And the pain that is acting out in childbirth as they continue to get triggered, as they continue to become something physical in the world, pain emerges. And actually in this story, we're not going to deal with them until they become Nephilim. They are the result, it's our corrupt inner selves, the beautiful daughters of men. It is all of our innocence and joy, all that stuff that we've lost. Now we're big creatures. We want to get rid of that. When we get the first sin, that's going to represent we are now going off and having life experiences, and this happy higher connection that we have is going to gradually be lost as we learn to live through our life experiences until we get to a point we want to turn inward and heal. We're not there yet, though. This is a point before the journey begins. We're all set up, we're queued up, we're ready to go. We're little children. Let's play life. All right, I've got this going right here. I've jumped ahead. This is a number analog count. Eden, 7, is repeated 3 times. That represents the conscious inner self in a pure state. This is a place where we start out and we want to get back to. So I've got that listed here as Eden, but also you see that I've got the 3 there and the 7 there. I've got other numbers collected, but we're going to go see where those come from. But you see right here, I've got the Eden, the 3, and the 7. Jesus tells us to find the kingdom by, being like children. In the Gospel of Thomas, it goes so far as to say something like, the man old in years will ask a child 7 days old of the place of life, and he will live. Yet it's getting back to this earlier state right there. It's encoded in the verbiage. You might also notice that there's a 40 there. What we're going to do is, what is going on here? How do we gather those numbers? I'll tell you, it's pretty simple, actually, if you process it. They're using that 3 and the 7 now is going to go out as a piece of code. And through a system of repeating, it's going to be pointing to other numbers, not just once, in a number of different places, in a count layering system that's kind of weird. I'll show you what that means. Now, before I do, again, you have to let this grow. We've got to gather up some things. What I want to say is that these numbers right here, we're going to look at them. I'm going to go gather them up. We're going to see how they're gathered. But what I'm going to suggest is that those numbers right there, if you look at how many times they are repeated in the entire Bible, that group of numbers right there, just short of 4,000 times in the Bible, that small group of numbers right there, 4,000 times that group of numbers right there is repeated in the Bible. That is significant. There's a reason for it. All right, I don't want to spend a lot of time gathering up all of the numbers because I think that gets too dry. I think we should just look at how it's done. And what I've learned already here, I've got the King James Version of Genesis up on my computer, and I've learned to search for certain things. I'm going to go for a 7 here. All right, the sevenfold is the first time another number is used in the Bible. And it's in the Cain and Abel story right here. There is a point right here is where you see the code. Sevenfold Truly, Lamech 70 and sevenfold. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. Now, something that's going to be very important to understand here is that 70 and sevenfold does not mean 77. If we treat it that way, we're going to get lost. You have to treat it like a 7 and a 7 surrounding a 70. That's not a 77, that's a 70 and sevenfold. Sevenfold. So we treat it that way, and instead what we see is two 7s surrounding a 70. I'm going to grab that up. Now, if we get down here, I'm going to just grab a few like this. If we read through here, look at some numbers in here. Look at that 30. How about the 7? How about this 12? They appear with other numbers, 807, 912, 815. But if you don't look at the numbers that are there, the large one, and you just look at this, you will recognize that those are the repeating numbers. They're going to come from other sources. We're going to find them in the Sodom analog farm too. 10s, 20, 30, 40. Will you destroy it for the sake of 50? We're going to get there and see how that works as well. But right now we're seeing these numbers and we can gather them up. However, you might look at what you'd say, well, what is the 800 and the 900? What then? That's not a 7 or a 3. Watch this. 900 is exactly 7 times. The only time 900 is used in Genesis is right here in this Adam's lineage. I call it an analog farm, an Adam's analog farm. So if you take that, what they've done then, instead of, they've just layered it in deeper. It's like, well, we can't send a 7 out and grab a 30, and a 7 and a 12, and a 7 and a 5. I know, let's send out a 900, build it in a story like this that sounds, well, it doesn't sound right. It has to be, it really begs to be explained. If, however, you just go, okay, you know what? That 900, if that's a 7, then it's grabbing numbers. Let's do that. Let's grab those numbers. What about the 800? That's another bizarre one. 7 times. Well, by golly, what do you think they're doing right there? They are using the 800 and the 900 as surrogates for 7 in a layer deeper than yeah. So you see that they're encoding it in there, that's how, if you can follow along with that right there, that's how they're encoding. But what they're doing is they're just using that to gather up other numbers. Those continue to connect up. So these numbers then, I look at them and go, well, why don't I go put them all where the 3 and the 7 started from and just start gathering up a big pile and see what happens? And what happens is we find that those 16 are repeated 4,000 times in the Bible. Yeah, there's something big in here. We don't know it because we don't have it in our brains well enough. Okay, another place I'm just going to jump to, and I'm going to kind of glaze over this. If anybody wants to query me on it, you're welcome to. I've done videos on it, but they get kind of scattered. I know, it's a big thing. Right here we have the story of Sodom. Abraham draws near to God and starts asking him about the destruction of Sodom. Will you destroy the righteous with the wicked? What if there's 50 righteous? Would you destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that's within? And it starts going through this thing that if you continue down, it almost starts sounding like a Dr. Seuss, Would you destroy it for 50 righteous? No, I would not, Abraham. I would not destroy it for... Yeah, okay, so anyway, you look at it and go, it's a weird sounding thing. 50-50, 50 is said 4 times. Then we start looking at other things and we realize these are the same numbers again. We've got our 5, we've got our 5, we've got our 40, 30, 20, 10, 10s. Yeah, we're collecting these elsewhere and we're collecting them here. How do we know to connect them? Look at this righteous right here. This is that staccato word repeat to look for. The righteous, the righteous, the righteous, the righteous, the righteous, the righteous. You count it? Righteous is repeated exactly 7 times right there. So they're using righteous now to connect and say, here is another analog farm. And I'm going to point to the 50s, which again is said 4 times. 4 is one of our numbers. 50 is one of the numbers. We've got our 5. Yeah, okay. So again, we've got our collection of numbers. Does everybody see that so far. So that's, in a nutshell, kind of what they're doing. This is just the surface. It gets deeper. If you looked at how many times names are repeated in there and all that, it's going to come up with a much tighter grid than even what I'm showing. This is just a glance at the surface of it. Okay, we've got our number analog count here, and I've got some other stuff that I've worked on before. I'm going to skip over this right now. That's our word count. Those 16 numbers, yep, repeated almost 4,000 times. I've got the 800 and 900 there. They were, along with righteous, were surrogates for gathering up other numbers. And actually, that's not entirely true. Righteousness now becomes this pure place right here. When you seek and knock for righteousness later, this is what you're seeking and knocking for, this pure state. Yeah. So righteousness, both become analogous terms that represent the same place right here. Can we prove that? If you were to continue on, day 8, or 8, step 8 actually, it's called 7-day, but it represents a beginning point. And 8 represents the time when you are now losing your childhood innocence. That the first sin does not mean you've done something bad. It means you are now moving away from your higher awareness and your pureness of self and starting to live through the memories of the experiences of life. So 8 is there. We would even see when is circumcision due for Hebrew boys on day 8. The 21, so there's a step from 7 to 8, and then I already know that there's a step from 20 to 21 that also is derogatory. I don't know about others. It's still much deeper than I can find right now. But I can say that if we were to go to Genesis again, see the 8 and the 21 right there. Remember that? Let's go back to Genesis and take a look at something. All right, I just want to show you how that numbering sequence works. If I searched Sodom in the entire book of Genesis, it is repeated exactly 21 times, which would put it into the category of that is a bad thing. When I say that this is how the numbering system is giving weight to the analog, Sodom actually means the temple of my old self that I need to destroy. Having it being repeated 21 times tell me it's a bad thing, it's evil. It's hidden in the story that way, but really it represents, myself, my early, or anybody going on the pathway, looking at their life going, oh my God, what have I become? I want to change this. So Sodom, you can see it's a bad thing here. Okay, what I want to do is apply it to the Noah story, where Noah is uncovered. He's got the nakedness going on. And he was a husbandman. He drank of the wine and was drunk and was uncovered with his tent. And Ham, the father, saw nakedness and told his brother. So you look at that and go, whew, boy, that's what is going on there. That's a rough way to start after you are God's chosen. You get yourself drunk, pass out. Phew, I've been there before. Not a good place. Doesn't sound good. All right, so here's what happens. We have to interpret it. If you're on the journey, you're Noah. You are creating a new life, a husband. You're planting a new vineyard. You're planting a new life on the other side of your healing process. And you drank of the wine and were drunk and uncovered within the tent. So let's take a look at a couple of things. I'm going to say wine. Let's look at wine and see what it is here. Wine being repeated exactly 12 times tells me the value of it is good. Drunk. It's only place. Uncovered, tent. Let's go nakedness. Exactly 5 times. It is said in the entire book of Genesis. But for nakedness here then, nakedness is what? It's on the good list. So he drank of the new experience and was drunk and was uncovered within his tent, and seeing the nakedness, the uncovered, who is Ham. This is a mental hierarchy. This is going to be sequencing parts of us. We are complex creatures, very complicated. We're going to come through a healing process and we're going to feel good, but after a time, we're going to be covered up by our other experiences if we're on an inward healing path. You're going to say, okay, I got that big one out of the way. Oh my gosh, does this feel good? And after you come down from that, after a couple of weeks or a month or something like that, you're going to be like, That felt so good. I know that if I take care of the next thing nagging at me, that'll be better. And you're going to start on a journey, and that's what this is. So you're covered back up, and you're going to continue on. Remembering that one of the bad things that happened, Adam and Eve were naked in the garden before first sin. Only after first sin were they covered up. That doesn't represent putting on clothes. That represents, I am no longer open and pure about things. I now have things to hide, things that I believe, things that I'm angry over, things that I have shame over. That is the stuff that we're covering up with. So they got covered up and left. What happens? Noah, he's naked. He's uncovered from that stuff, but then gets recovered again. We're actually early on looking for nakedness. That's not going to continue through the Bible. That's pretty archaic. They're going to start using, pure cloths, linen versus sackcloth and things like that, to represent covering up spiritually, or not a pure covering or an unpure covering. Throwing out in the population is getting naked all the time probably isn't a good idea. Have to shift the analogs. That's going to sequence. But you can see then how the numbering system is when you see the numbers, the repeating, and then the repeating words, if you keep playing with them, you start tying them together and realize, okay, this is what they're doing in the background. They're trying to tell you that if you're not interpreting this in the physical world, but you see what people come up with. But if you're going to interpret it at the layer of template, that there's sequences in here that's going to guide you along the path. If you're unsure whether this is good or bad, just ask your buddy, how many times did they say Noah's name? 41. Sarai's, 17. 17 was gathered up in the Noah flood. So all of these you start looking at, and there's a lot of cross-reference over that that's going on there. But look, you know what? Without getting further into Genesis, that's just how it works. What I want to demonstrate is that this works throughout Abrahamic material. Let's take that set of numbers. Let me just grab another book of the Bible. All right, you know what? I jumped all the way down to the book of Matthew, King James Version. It goes all the way through the Old Testament, but you know what? I want to show you that it's being maintained all the way down into the New Testament. The new authors, they're keeping this background happening. Okay, let's just look at a couple of things. First of all, I want to show you the cross-referencing going on. How many times does 3 appear in the book of Matthew? 12 times. We got a cross-reference going on. Is that significant? Maybe. How about 7? 12 times. Cross-referencing. What about a 12? 12 times. Cross-referencing. Let's go back up to the top up here. Look at David, son of Abraham. We've got Jacob, and Jacob begat Judas. Judas, we know Judas is a bad guy, don't we? David's a good guy, should be. Let's see how many times David appears. 17 times. Same as the amount of Sarai's name in Genesis. Good thing. David's good. Abraham. 7 times. Abraham is good. In case you had any questions. We kind of know, but just this old code. Judas. 8 times. Oh, hey, do we have something going on here? Yeah, we do. Let's see. What else do we have in here? Let me just pop down to a couple of other random things here. I'm just going to pick some that we should be able to recognize very easily. Yeah, baptized. We know that's a good thing. Sure enough. See how simple it is? All right, how about bread? 15. That's a good thing. Yeah, it is. Where did Jesus go? Into the wilderness. Wilderness had better be a pure place, huh? Wilderness 5 times. There we have it. And in the book of Luke, we're even told for how long? 40 days. Yep. And he was about 30. Yeah. All right, I jumped to Revelation, and to speed things up, I already just went ahead and documented these, or counted them out and put them there. So let's take a look and see what we have here. Again, this is the book of Revelation, King James Version, and what we have, the revelation of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is repeated 7 times. John 5 times. Church 20 times. It's on our list. Spirit 23. That's going to be a combination of a 20 and a 3. Throne 40. Jesus Christ again, 7. Kings 33. First, 20. Dead, 18. There we have our step into, it looks like a step beyond 17 to 18, doesn't it? That's still out there. But we have Amen 10 times. Cloud 7. I 10. Amen 10. Alpha and Omega 4. What we would begin to see if you continued through here is that pattern continues. If you just pulled up and start, I mean, you can watch me and do it, but if you pulled up, if you downloaded those onto a Word document using the King James Version and just started looking through those, it would astound you. If you just spend time in one. It's hard here because of it's because it's so big and people aren't used to spending that much time watching videos trying to figure things out. But you can see it's very old. It's archaic. There's something going on that we have to kind of spend time figuring out. It's not just a matter of saying, oh, here it is. Take a look, everybody. Okay, I got it. It's like, what? This and that too? And here's how, yeah, there's so much going into it that we've lost touch with that it's not a simple thing to relearn. Let me go back to Genesis for a second. This is where I like working because I haven't finished it yet. But let's just go look at something else again up here to continue to show this pattern of how to follow these, how to read them if we know what's in the background. These are very structured. All right, what I want to do is bring your attention to one specific part right after the Cain and God split and we start heading off on our own. This represents us. Right here is Lamech. Lamech is going to represent me or you or anybody that's on the adventure. And we're going to have two wives. That means we're going to have two parts of us. One of us is going to be called Adah, and the other name is Zillah. Remember, this is really old, okay? We have to try to get out of our biases. All right, if I'm Lamech, if I come over here and ask who is good, Lamech is repeated 10 times. I know that's a good thing then. That's been collected from the analog list. And now my wives were who? Zillah? 3 times. Zillah is a good part. That's 10 and 3 off of that list. The other wife was Adah. 8 times. Okay, so do you see what's happening? The values of the analogs are being weighted by repeating them the amount of times necessary to place them on a numbering sequence template. Does it seem why is it? That's why it's so hard for us to see it. Yet at the same time, if you look at it, you realize if we had it memorized, and if we had memorized how many times the nouns and verbs were said, we could do this right in our heads. It would be nothing to us. If we lived through this, we would be just knocking this right out. We would understand it. And there's a lot more than what I've covered here. I want to touch on it and try to make, I don't know, I've got to try to figure out ways of making it more concise. At the same time, there's so many parts to it that it's just difficult. So, in fact, for myself, I would say looking at it now that it's honestly pretty easy to do. It's not difficult. It's a memorization process that we're devoid of. The actual things that they're doing when you analyze it and you use the computer enough and think through it, it begins to make sense, and it's actually a pretty simple thing that they're doing through repeats. When you keep putting the repeats together and scratching your head, and then you realize it's the way that they are repeating words, that's it right there. When you hear things being said, 2, 3, 4 times in a couple of sentences, they want you to count those. You're supposed to. And it's all throughout the entire Bible. We just don't know that. And we don't know it well enough to know already, oh, that's said exactly this amount of times in this book, and that's one said exactly that amount of times. If we knew that, we would start going, wait a minute, something's going on. Now, I want to talk about something deeper. 7-3 grid, that's a pure state. When does the flood start? What chapter? Chapter 7. That's when the flood starts. That's when it's time for purity. Things go on and it's time for the sequence to start again. That's Abram and Sarai. That's us in the starting off where the sequence begins again. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of how this looks. In fact, let's just go take a look at this right here. You see how it says Adam and Eve 3 and 7. Adam and Eve represents us in our pure state, and the 3 and the 7 is right there. We get to Abram and Sarai. what we're going to find out is Abram's name was said 59 times. Abram isn't quite right there. That's okay. Abram is going to turn into Abraham. So we don't want Abram to be pure at this point. Sarai, however, is fine in the beginning. Look at her, 17. And where does it start? Chapter 12. Right on chapter 12 is where the next step starts. If we get down into Isaac and Rebekah, we're going to see Isaac was 40 years old. His name is repeated 80 times. Rebekah's name is repeated 30 times. If you were to go, so you see male, female in that numbering sequence. This is code for pure state. Sons and daughters, Job. He's got 7 sons and 3 daughters. Sons and daughters, male, female, 7, 3. This is the pure male, female state. But you see that they're shifting the analogs, but the numbers are staying locked in. Also on a macro scale, as the chapters move along, and there are 50 chapters in Genesis, that each one of them as it goes along, 3 is first sin, so it really has to get into it first. But as soon as the flood starts, chapter 7, then we've got chapter 12, which is the next one. There's a beginning there. At each one of those, when you find like chapter 15, chapter 20, chapter 25, chapter 17, there's going to be good stuff happening. And if you get into like a chapter 8 and things like that, it'll be the other way. So there's something sequencing in here that has to do with the human life template, the cycle of human life and where we come from, where we're going back to, and how we heal. But who can find the path? But it seems like it's been lost to us out here in public, at least. So I should end this video just because they get too long and I think people just kind of lose interest. In this one, I kind of tried to show it a different overview. I know as I learn, and I'm trying to figure it out more too, that the videos, I realize they're cumbersome. I'm trying to figure it out and I'm making videos. I'm not who knows this stuff? You're just fumbling through and trying to figure it out and apply it in some way and understand what it is. And okay, so at some point, this video was really just to kind of quickly show a bunch of stuff. If we zeroed in on any one book of the Bible and just started going through every word, we would see the numbering pattern emerge. It's not just a couple words in each chapter. It gets deep. I do need to complete the work. I don't have there's a link between Babylonia and, well, the book of Genesis. Somewhere in there, there's a blend of things that sound kind of Babylonian in Genesis. They're a different style. And there's a different numbering pattern in there, and I haven't quite linked it all together yet. So what I'm going to do is make videos on those and just fumble through them. I don't think they'll be that interesting. People don't like those ones, but they have to be done. That's how I'm figuring this out, so I have to fumble through it. All right, well, questions, comments, anybody else want to download on your own and start looking? Yeah, ask me any questions. I give you advice. It's a fun thing. It's a puzzle. There's something here. It's amazingly detailed. So those 16 numbers being repeated almost 4,000 times. Now you look at how many words are repeated that same amount of times and you're like, oh my gosh. 4,000's just the ones that are easy to see. Yeah, think about it. Now all the words, nouns and verbs are repeated the same amount of times that those, well, not just those, but also the 8s, the 21s. There's a number of others. That's not a complete pool. That's a pool of good ones. It's not the pool of other ones. The sin along the way, the hurt, the pain, I'm not quite sure. It's a human life cycle. So anyway, it's going to take more work. Hope it was fun and interesting. And again, yeah, question, comments. I'll see you in the next video.